financial independence. That, I think, is the goal that most of us want. Now, how do we define that? To me, financial independence is when you've done a good enough job with your finances that work is optional.
All right, Todd, thanks for coming back on again. This next part of it, we had people submit questions. I'm really excited to dive into those.
This is the scary part for me.
This is the scary part for you? This is like
no
the most
idea what's
part.
coming.
So I've got just a series of questions, and we're just going to run down them.
Right.
The first question is boxers or briefs?
Well, all right. Didn't know it'd go that way.
Yep.
Boxers,
same here. Yeah, that's good. All right, so say you've got let's throw out a hypothetical situation. You've got a podcast and you're starting to take in sponsorship money and things from the podcast. How should one handle that financially? Would it be creating an LLC? This is, by the way, totally unrelated to anything, right?
I would probably go the LLC route.
Would you?
That's where a CPA could probably give you a little bit of help. But just, how much, at the same time, a lot of people go that route to protect themselves from potential liability. So how much really liability could come from that? Probably low risk.
Since you're not having to really...
I may waffle a little bit and say, I don't know that it's a big deal. Just a sole proprietorship kind of setup may be fine.
As long as you're taking taxes
though,
out.
As far as, I was about to say, that's where the CPA is going to be helpful. Make sure you make the right choices.
Cool. What are 3 either books or videos, podcasts, whatever it may be, that are a must to consume around financial health? Like, what are the 3 things you would say?
All right. Specifically to finances, obviously scripture. There's little fun fact. There's about 500 verses in the Bible about faith, 500 about prayer. But money and possessions, there's over 2,300.
Wow.
I mean, the big mistake that we often have is we think God speaks to 10% of our finances, right? And when the reality is he owns 100%. So just pure scripture, guys. There's so much in there. When I first felt called into the teaching side of what I do, one of the things I began doing, and I still do it to this day, when I'm doing my Bible study, I have a green highlighter and I underline in green if it's related to finances. And then I try to unpack, how does that fit? So, I mean, really scripture is one of the best places. But as far as what has really influenced me and is just so powerful would be Randy Alcorn's book, Money, Possessions, and Eternity. Now, I'll warn viewers and listeners now, it's a big book. It's thick. It's small print. Mine is just shredded just about with pages folded over and highlight. It is so solid. And the reason it's so solid, Randy comes at it from scripture first, and then finances, what's it teaching? The tendency we have to, when we teach topically, and I have to guard my own heart for this too, it's so easy to have a preconceived idea of what you want to teach, and then you find a scripture to support it. And guys, that's not good Bible study. What you want to do is, what does scripture just say? How's it unfold? And I would say that's the most powerful book I've ever read. If you can't find that one, he's written a couple of others, The Treasure Principle, which is a very small book. And then there's another one. Oh, and you would think I would know the name of it. I was actually talking to Randy Alcorn at a conference one time, and we both had booths set up, and we were about to leave. And I had these 2 banners that you just zip down. I was done. I was leaving. Well, he had all his books. And I was kind of giving him a hard time, saying, man, it looks like you'll be here a while. He says, do you want some books? I said, yeah. He sold them to me for $2 a piece. I bought every one of them he had, but the name is escaping me right now. But hey, search Randy Alcorn.
Amazon.
You'll find it.
Finding one there.
But I would say that's probably, as from a biblical perspective, just so solid. Now, for application wise, like how do you apply it to your finances in day-to-day life? I would say Ron Blue has a good book, Master Your Money. Yeah, so that's another good source. And I'm big into audiobooks and podcasts and different things. Podcast-wise, the ones I tend to listen to are more for advisors. I don't know if that'll be too helpful, but no matter what you're doing, keep grounded in the Word, because that's what's going to drive good financial decisions. To me, there's 2 things you need to be a good steward. You have to have the spiritual side. You got to be connected to the Lord. But that's not enough, by the way. You also have to be seeking wisdom to make good financial choices, right? And that comes from scripture reading, but also comes from real life application stuff. And if you have one but not the other, it's not so. And if you have neither, it's a disaster, right? The good news is, for somebody that's spiritually on the right path, I believe that person has a chance to get the other one right, because God's going to convict, God's going to drive. You're going to not going to be able to get away from that conviction that, well, I really need to step up my game here.
And I think in almost anything, whether you're trying to figure out, like, should I listen to this person on a podcast? Like, do they know what they're talking about? I think practitionership of that person, like, is probably really important with almost any discipline. Just make sure that they're, like, actually doing it and not just, like, spouting out.
Yeah, don't go to a CPA that's, in trouble with tax evasion, financial advisor that's filed bankruptcy.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Then we got text messages coming in as well. So one message was, what are some tips and best financial practices for couples getting married?
Get on the same page. And this is whether you're getting married or you've been married for a long time. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. We all come from different backgrounds, right? And I can imagine that most married people would agree that you have a grand vision of how it's going to work. You always get along. You always agree. Things go well, right?
Yeah.
And then you get married. It's like, wait, what happened, right? And you're not always on the same page. And what it is we all have different backgrounds. We all have different styles of communication. We all have different tendencies. And that can be very problematic in marriage. So what I would say is, for young people considering, they're getting married or that are already married and maybe drifting a little bit, is you've got to reconnect, get on the same page. So as an example, one thing that I did years ago is I was speaking at a marriage conference, home builders marriage conference. And I thought to myself, all these people that'll be there, they're not as connected with their spouse on finances like Holly and I are, right? So I need to help them become more like us. So I'm building up a story here, as you can tell. So I put together these worksheets, right? The idea is the husband fills out one set, the wife fills out one set, and then you come together and you discuss your answers. And I thought, well, Holly, before I teach this, you and I probably should do it.
Yeah.
Right? Let's fill out these things. Because I was sure I knew where she was on these things, that we were on the same page. And let me tell you, brother, I was ashamed. When I saw her answers, I realized I didn't know my wife's heart. I didn't know what she valued or what she had, her goals and aspirations were. Yeah. And so because of that, how could we have oneness, right? And so what you want in a marriage, in a healthy marriage, is oneness. Now, also for people getting married, so try to get a lot of these questions answered up front, like, what do you feel compelled to give? Yeah. How do we live on a budget? How do we feel about debt? All these things. Who's going to handle the finances? Typically, you don't want two people. I mean, one of you is going to probably take over, right? And it doesn't have to be. There's not anything
Courtney
biblical.
Yeah.
Well, guess who does in our family, right? That's my role. But if you try to split it up or too much, all of a sudden, it's going to become a mess. You got to have one person that normally oversees, and it doesn't matter, man or woman, either way. But what I will say is communicate. Because what happens is the tendency is, all right, let me give you an example. The wife handles the books, and the wife sees the money coming in. She also sees all the nickel and dime stuff that goes out. I have 2 girls. Let me tell you. Bows. I didn't know hair bows could cost as much as they do. No joke. As the husband, I see these checks going in, but I'm like, where did it all go? Right? I don't see it. And so what can happen is that opens the door for bitterness, for resentment. So you got to get on the same page is the number one thing here. So get together once in a while, have a financial date night. Doesn't that sound exciting?
Doesn't that sound enticing?
Yeah. Hot.
But it makes sense. I mean, like, when you're striving for oneness, I mean, like the enemy can use finances as like one of the
it'll do one
levers,
of two things, right? It'll blow you apart, or it can draw you closer together. So Holly and I, when we went through those worksheets, because I was going to teach everybody else to be as good as we were, we came back a year later and looked at those sheets, and it was so cool. We saw all these things that we accomplished together. We rallied together, and so all of a sudden, your spouse is not the enemy. Your spouse is your teammate, your partner, and you're working together towards things.
Yeah, makes sense. This is probably one you get a lot. is what should I invest in and how much?
Ooh, I got to be careful with my sense of humor because I want to just spout off some stuff for fun. But Bitcoin, no, don't do that.
That's another question coming up.
Yeah, that's one I will have to skillfully dodge. Now I can give some general parameters though. With investing, first you want to avoid the typical. It's so easy to want to get rich quick, right? To have a big hit. Because what happens is your buddy comes up to you and he says, man, I bought this thing and look how much money I made.
Right.
And he doesn't come up and say, I lost everything before that.
Right.
Or, man, I did after the fact here. They tell you the success stories and not the horror stories. So don't get drawn in by that. And there's plenty of scripture that talks about he was willing or wants to get rich quick will not go unpunished. Right. So guard your heart there. The boring approach to investing normally is the way to go, which is diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. King Solomon, King Solomon is a great person to seek financial advice from, right? He's the smartest dude to ever live and the richest, right? But he said, give portions to 7, yes to 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land, which, his phrase didn't catch on quite like don't put all your eggs in one basket. But it's the same idea. So while I can't say exactly what to invest in, the parameters are, you want to diversify. Don't put everything into one place. And be strategic about it. Somebody that's young, has a long time, they can probably go aggressive. As you get older, you tend to get more conservative. This is not an advertisement for me by any stretch, but you really do need to have someone that can partner with you with those kinds of decisions.
Navigate that. That understands it. What are your thoughts on people that get student loans knowing that they will have a very hard time paying them off, and what would be some alternatives?
Good question. So debt, let's visit debt in general, right? What is debt? Is debt a sin? Is it wrong? Is it sinful? And I will say not necessarily. In scripture, what you find is over and over where we see that debt can be dangerous. And I think that's what we need to identify, is that debt can indeed be dangerous. Now, it can be used wisely as well. In fact, in scripture, one thing I like to point out is in scripture, it was recommended to loan people the money when they needed it as a form of borrowing. So that's how we can know that debt is not a sin. So if you're struggling with that spiritually, it's not a sin, but it can be dangerous. So there can be good debt and there can be bad debt. Bad debt is pretty much anything that doesn't appreciate or have the ability to grow in value for you, right? So, you put pizza on your credit card every time you buy it and you make the minimum payment, you're going to be paying $1 million for pizza over your lifespan kind of thing. That's bad debt. You got nothing to show for it. Now, a good debt would be maybe one that can appreciate in value. So a home could be considered a good debt. Now, that doesn't give you full reign of, hey, I'm going to go buy $1 million house. There's disclaimers, there's boundaries. Student loans, to get to that, right? That could be considered a good thing because it's an investment into your future.
Right.
The challenge is, and I've seen this happen where someone that's going down a creative line of work accumulates $100,000 of student loans, and they're not going to be in a career path likely that
pays that off.
So that to me is not very wise. So there's no perfect solution to that. You just have to be cautious.
I think about, there's a friend in particular that started landscaping business right out of high school, and he didn't see the value in going to college and getting anything because he saw instead of getting in debt through loans that way, he could already be starting to make money and learn so much and get so much value out of just learning how to run a business and be in that business. And I think there's smart ways to go about it, for sure. I think it goes back to our taste things. If you don't know what it is, then right, because a lot of people they rack up the loans and then they have a change in direction of where they're going, and they rack up more, not realizing how much it's going to haunt them. I've got friends, I'm 43 and they still have student loans. They graduated with me and they still have student loans haunting them today. So that's why a big shout out to mom and dad. Thanks for not making me take on student loans. I was fortunate that they provided for my education. What or who are key people to listen to for stock tips?
I would say there's not a person.
Okay.
Stock tips are normally just a way for the media to get people roped in, right? The stock tips, investing is almost commoditized anymore. There's not a whole lot of value. I don't feel like one person is going to do better than another. I mean, it used to be back in the day, right? We had Warren Buffett. Didn't want to say Jimmy Buffett, get those crossed up. Warren Buffett, one of the heroes of investing, and he's not able to really get any beneficial meaningful return or edge over the benchmarks. So why do we think we can? And things have changed since then. He actually used to buy companies like the certificates and go and revamp the company. It's different than what we talk about today. So I would say that the stock picking things, while it's alluring, it should be the last thing. I have this thing called building your strong tower, which is a shameless promotion of my own company's name, right?
Strong Tower.
Strong Tower, right? It's cheesy, but it works. But you build it in stages. The base level is what we call understanding God's plan. What is God's plan for your life? Where is He directing you? You get that foundational worldview right first, and it's going to drive everything else. Every other decision is affected by it. But as you go up that, you hit other levels. So generosity is one of them. So we need to be giving before we focus on other things. Getting the right insurances and legal documents in place. Getting out of debt. You shouldn't invest until you get the debt straightened out, by the way. That's probably a good tip to throw out there, because let's say you got a credit card charging you 29% interest. Why would you ever invest? You're going backwards. You may feel like you're going forward, but you're really going backwards. So you got to knock that stuff out. But then after that, we get into savings and investments, right? Build up your emergency fund, build up your investment stuff. But at the very top of this building your strong tower, we have this thing called speculative, right? And we even have icons for each of these items as we build. So when I'm working with clients, when I'm teaching from a ministry standpoint, I'm going through this process, and the icon for speculative is a flame, right? It's fire. There's a warning in this, okay? This is the last thing you normally do, and it could be buying individual stocks. So if you want to do that, that's fine. I do it some, but it's with my play money. I get my other stuff in place first. Now, let me show you the wrong way to do it. I had a guy one time come into my office. He wasn't a client of mine, but he had heard us on the radio back in the day, and he said, what do I do? He says, I talked to this friend of mine. He had this stock tip, and he said, man, this company is huge. There's never been a company this big to file bankruptcy before. And so the stocks, they're having some financial trouble, but they'll get it back on track. There's some logic to that, right? Well, he took his entire family's savings, their life savings, and he bought this stock. And that was Enron.
Oh, gosh.
So he's right. That was the biggest company to ever file bankruptcy. If that had been the last thing he went to, right, it would have been okay just putting a little play money in there. But when I spoke to him, he had not even told his wife yet. He had to make that long drive home. And I don't know how that went.
I'm sure it wasn't a happy conversation.
The stock pick thing, again, you push that back. You get everything else in place first, right? And then you can go into that if you want to a little bit. But I don't have a person I would say as a good, this is the guy to talk to, whatever.
So switching from kind of personal finance to business finance, VC funding or loans, what's your thoughts on that versus just for revenue-based, building a business on revenue-based?
I tend to go more toward the revenue side just because that's my own bent. Hey, you can't argue with success that all of these VC places have had. Statistically, most small companies don't succeed, right? So you got to keep that in mind.
Fail.
And so I'm very fortunate. Here I was able to start one business, and that's all I've ever done. My whole life. But yeah, man, there's a lot of peril there. So just realize if you structure it right, so that it's not all on you personally if you go that route. So I can't say it's always a bad idea, but man, just like we said with debt, it's dangerous. Make sure you do it the right way.
Well, I think we were talking about the internet is kind of like taking the middleman out of everything, right? And so creating a business nowadays, you can just do it on your phone, right? It's so easy to just get a business started. And so I've always skewed towards the revenue based, and VC funding is taking a hit right now. There's a lot of people that have lost a lot, and WeWork is a big topic that comes up, and how they went about things, and there wasn't actually any value in what they were doing. So like it was a mess, right? And so now I've seen like a lot of VC funders and foundations are kind of pulling back. And then loans, I think it's always being careful. But if you can like, it's if you're trying to build a business with a legacy, going the revenue route, it can't really take you to a wrong place. Like, one, you're in control, right? Like there's not some VC person behind trying to pull strings, and if you have conflict with them, you kind of have to like go wherever they say. Like they're making the shots at the end of the day because it's their money. But revenue based just seems like more freedom for you as the owner, and then
definitely resonates more with me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. So let's say someone is newly married. Should we do a joint checking account, separate accounts, a little bit of both?
I used to be pretty, like I said, in the last show we did, I would have been a great Pharisee, right? I like legalism. That's my bent if I'm not careful, and so God is continually working into me the grace and all. But what I have seen is separate accounts it can be giving Satan a foothold, right? It can cause division. It can cause a rift. That being said, I've seen people do it very effectively.
Yeah.
Where husband and wife, practical reasons, they need to have spending money that's accessible different ways, and they've used it and made it work. But they communicate well. They stay on the same page. They come back to it periodically, and I'm totally cool with that. But what I would say is the reason a lot of people go that way initially is not out of practicality. It's more like, well, this is my money, not your money, right? And my paycheck's bigger than your paycheck or whatever. That just gives the door to Satan at that point. He will destroy a marriage quickly if you have that mindset. In fact, number one cause for divorce these days typically is marriage, or that communication around it. So if you do it, just be cautious. Make sure you have the right boundaries in place.
Gotcha. All right, so we got the next several questions are going to be from like, what should I be doing as a high schooler, a college student, newly married, in my 30s and in my 40s, and like kind of like throughout the stages of life, how should I be thinking about these certain questions? All right.
That's good.
All right. So big picture, what does being financially healthy look like?
Oh, that's good.
For each of those stages.
Yeah, so here's the thing that I think as what is the goal? What is the end game? Remember, we've got to start with what we want in mind, and then we got to re-engineer how are we going to get to that point. And so for me, what I like to keep pointing out is financial independence. That, I think, is the goal that most of us want. Now, how do we define that? To me, financial independence is when you've done a good enough job with your finances that work is optional. At that point. And so really the way you gauge that, if you're successful or not at each phase, is, are you progressing towards that? Are you getting there?
Is it taking you step forward or step backwards? Like,
right. And then I also meet some people who are like, well, I don't want to, life isn't about just accumulating all this wealth. And I agree with that, but are you financially independent? Is that a worthwhile goal? Right. So we do need to be saving because, in fact, you look at the parable of the ant in Scripture. We're taught to go to the ant and to learn from the ant. Again, Solomon's a great person to learn from. And he says, you can learn from the ant because what does it do? While there's a harvest, it brings in the harvest to store for a time because winter's coming where it will no longer have food, right? And so the idea is we should be accumulating something for now for a season when there's not. And then if the ant is praised for doing that, but if the ant doesn't do that, then it says poverty awaits like a vagabond, right? And need like an armed man. Solomon is instructing his children here to tell them that you need to prepare for a time. Well, we all have an income now, and there will be a time, whether you like it or not, that you won't be having an income, right? It just happens. Even if you expect to work for the rest of your life, physically you may not be able to. So to me, if we have that goal, then everything else just falls into place. Even if you're a teenager with a job, you know what? You can be working now and you can be saving for the future. My daughter, I'm going to brag on her, 13 years old, and she's like, Dad, can I start investing some money for my first car purchase one day? Man, you could. I was just like, yes, that is so awesome. I must be doing something right. Now, part of it, she's kind of wired that way anyway.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, that's good stuff. So high school, college, newly married, 30s, 40s, credit cards. How should we think about credit cards?
They're of the devil, right? Oh man, I remember in college.
They give you a T-shirt for signing up for credit cards.
I was about to say, like, did you? Yeah. That's what I remember. We would come to college onto campus, and there would be a booth.
Yeah,
and you see all these kids around it, and you could get T-shirts, slinkies, basketballs, all this stuff. And you know what? I actually signed up for them. I got that stuff, and then I canceled the account immediately. I don't know if that was smart, but I got the slinky. So I was happy. I had a slinky. But a lot of my friends, they didn't do that, right? They started using it, and it almost feels like free money, right? Just swipe it and worry about it later, but it snowballs, and all of a sudden you are stuck. I mean, let me tell you, the thing that kills people financially is credit cards. It will destroy you faster than anything else. It's easy to get into, sometimes even fun to get into credit card debt, but man, you will hate yourself later for it. So much of this financial planning is, I sometimes teach that there's young you, right? That's you today.
Yeah.
And there's old you, the one time, in the future that you will become.
Yep.
The hard part is keeping young you from spending all of old you's money. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the sad thing is young you has all the cards. They got all the power.
Right.
No, that's the person that controls. And it's so tempting to just live for today, charge it up, live it up now. And then old you is going to be so mad and want to smack you with the cane that he's holding, right? So you want to find a balance there. But I will say, I know this is opposite of the question, but let me point this out. You can be the other way too, where you can oversave. All right, that's my tendency. I could oversave for the future. Some people will be like, how does that happen? Well, you can. Right. Then you're a hoarder, right? Some people, they save so much for the future, they ignore all the opportunities they have today to invest into their family, into their time with their kids and whatnot. And old you is going to be loaded, but man, you've squandered away a lot of your life along the way. So I think you've got to find that balance. Because that's kind of my tendency. Because the people that are listening and watching, they are probably either bent to be a saver or a spender, one of the two.
Yep.
And we tend to get onto those spenders sometimes. But you know what? The savers, that can be a bad thing too if it's kept out of check.
Yeah.
Right. To be a biblical plan, there needs to be a stopping point. You got to think about it. Don't be a hoarder. Be a saver.
Yeah, makes sense. What's a great way to raise my credit throughout those years, and like what helps credit versus hurts your credit score?
Right. I'm not a credit expert.
Okay.
But still, the things you can do is you got to be timely on payments, right? That's the thing that they look at. And I remember one time, my credit score, I was looking at what was holding it back. And it was like I didn't have enough open debt loans. I'm like, just be happy about that, right?
No
I
joke.
don't owe money, but they want to see a history. They want to see that you're making payments. And so one thing a lot of people will do is, I'm not against using credit cards if you're using them wisely.
For a purpose, right?
Yes.
Like the intent behind it.
So I mentioned earlier that my wife and I have never owed on anything. We have never paid a penny of interest on a credit card in our lives. So if you charge something and you pay it off as soon as it comes in, they don't charge you interest, but you earn points. And so it actually, we can use it to benefit us. So let's just say you're going to buy gas for your car. Use that, charge it, and have a system where you're paying 100% of that balance. Just make sure you're always paying 100% of the balance. That is what's going to build that credit up and get you a good number, which will help you to maybe buying that first house or whatnot. But realize the danger. It is so easy to start swiping for other things, right? And you guys know who you are. Some of you are going to be more tended to do this than others, right? Know your personality, know your weaknesses, your temptations.
Self-awareness.
Yes, that's right. Going back to what we started with, self-awareness.
And Courtney and I, we got a credit card for emergencies when we got married and used it only for emergencies, and then would put a couple of bills on it that we'd pay off immediately, right? And it raised the limit to be fairly high, and we were like, oh my gosh. But we were like, keep with the plan. Like, just keep with the plan, right?
Man, what could we buy with that new
Right?
limit,
It's like,
man?
oh, it's so much. That's so many dollars.
See what we have in today's world, and this is probably getting more to the heart. See, a lot of the times when we see financial problems with people, that's a symptom. The root of it is somewhere else, right? And so I have this theory. I tell people that debt is so rampant today because of two reasons. One is because of spiders, and one is because of marshmallows. Which, yeah, that's the response I normally get. So let me explain what that means. Spiders, I hate spiders with a passion. I'm man enough to admit it. You know, sometimes in our house, Holly will come and kill the spiders for me. There's something about them. But in psychology terms, right, there's this thing called systematic desensitization, where if I wanted to, I could get closer and closer and closer to a spider, and even pick one up probably one day. Well, what I would say is, we've been desensitized to the danger of debt, right? Yeah. It didn't used to be that you could even do a 30-year loan or an interest-only loan, right? Today, we have no respect. We don't see it as a danger. Everybody's got it, right? So it's just normal. It's a way of life. No, you've been tricked into thinking that. You've been desensitized to it. I was talking to someone recently from California, and they were saying in California, they were using 50-year mortgages.
Holy cow.
Right? But that's the only way you can afford to live out there sometimes. And so
golly.
Spiders, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We've been desensitized to the danger, and we don't need to be. So treat these with respect. And marshmallows, there was an amazing study out of Stanford University. Michael Michel was the doctor at the time, and he called it the marshmallow test. And what he did, he took 4-year-olds. I thought it was hilarious. It's such a basic study with big results. They took 4-year-olds and they set them at a table, all right? And they put a marshmallow in front of them. Yeah. And they said, all right, if you want, you can eat that marshmallow, but I'm going to be back in a little bit. And if that marshmallow is still there, I'm going to give you a second marshmallow, right? Yeah. Well, what's the right thing to do? The smart thing. Wait, right? But a lot of them, of course, ate it. Well, the study didn't stop here. They followed these kids into adulthood. And what they found is the ones that waited and they got the second marshmallow, they were more disciplined. They had more successful marriages, higher incomes, greater career satisfaction. In general, to the rest of the population, they were just happier people. Yeah. Now the others, they were more distrustful. They had lower career satisfaction, lower income. All this from a marshmallow test, right? So I think that gets to the deeper issue of the credit card stuff. So use it wisely, but man, don't get sucked into it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I give you long answers. I don't know if
this is great. But... No, this is really great. So again, high school, college, newly 30s, 40s. What kind of savings should I have and be doing like along that path?
All right. So let me give you some rules of thumb, but realize rules of thumb break down all the time. So the professionals out there tend to say 3 to 4 months of living expenses is what you should have in an emergency fund. So 3 to 6 months, of living expenses. So that gives you a target, but it depends, right? Gotcha. For example, how old is your house? How much do you think you're going to have repairs? How high are your deductibles on your insurance policies? All these things or do you have kids, right? There's another, if you have kids, you need more cash on hand. How volatile is your income? So if you're self-employed like me, then your income can be volatile. Well, you need to have more reserves. So the rule of thumb can break down, but still it's not a bad starting point. Yeah. And then the one that goes along with that is how much should I be saving each month toward, let's say, retirement or whatever. Yeah. And the idea that goes around is I should give 10%, save 10%, and spend the rest, right? Give, save, spend in that order. That may work. It may not. It's not a bad rule of thumb, but what I will say is, all right, if you're 20, sure, that may work out. If you're 50, guess what? Saving 10% is not going to get you where you need to be. So that's where you have to have the goal in mind of where you want to be. Right. And then, build out a plan that's going to show you what it takes to get you where you need to be.
Makes sense. Thoughts on apps like Robinhood and Coinbase, things like that allow you to invest or do like robo advisor services?
Right. Yeah, those have become very popular. Hard to have a lot of opinion. My fear, what I see is I see people taking that as a first step into investing, and then they don't get anything deeper than that. You're not getting a whole lot of professional advice. You're getting kind of a commoditized product, and I'm not saying it's always bad, but I see that a lot of times they're pushing these investments that are not healthy for a person. That's not a good fit. A trained advisor will try to help pick a portfolio based on normally two things. One is strategy and logic, right? The math side of us, the nerdy side of us that likes to figure out, okay, you're this age now, this is your time frame and when you're going to need money, and I can strategically, based on what the markets have done, place you in a portfolio. But the other part of it is more what I would say artistic. It's more of a emotional connection. So yeah, I may put you in this portfolio that I think is right for you, and then you're going to need to drink Pepto-Bismol every month when you get your statement, right? Because I put you in something that you're not comfortable with. Right. So I do think that advisors out there earn their keep, but it's a quick, easy way to get started. I think it's kind of fun when you maybe get started, but then the more you save and invest and the more that's at risk, all of a sudden it's like, man, and maybe I should bring in somebody that's going to watch over it.
There's an app as well called Digit that like helps you set savings goals for different things, and then actually transaction by transaction helps you like understand like, okay, how much you can text it. Like you're literally just texting it and it's telling you, oh, you only have this much. So I saw on the thing and it's like, do I have money for pizza? And it tells you yes or no, and like things like that. And it's like, no, because you
ramen
want to
noodles
save.
Again.
Yeah, it's like, no, because you want to save for this, and like, or yes, because you did these things, you actually do have extra money this week.
So it's a tool to help with self-awareness, right?
Exactly. And
perfect.
And I think it's interesting having things like that. It's like $5 a month or something to do it.
Well, what it does, it helps you to prioritize, keep the things that are important in front of you. Jesus said, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Yeah. So by where I see you spending your money, I can tell what you value. But sometimes there's a disconnect. I had a friend one time that they couldn't start saving for their daughter's education. Education was big for them. And because they had too much debt, and they're like, we're going to get out of debt, and we're going to get things on track. Well, I came back a year later and to see if they'd made progress, if they could start saving for their daughter's education. No, but they did have this new big screen TV with low interest and low monthly payments.
Oh gosh.
Now the reality is, see, that app kind of helps you to cut that, to make sure you're not doing that short circuit. But the idea is, if you take that scripture that Jesus said, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's what you value. You just showed that TV is more valuable, right? And this app is designed to kind of help you keep your priorities in order. So good stuff. I'm nerding out over that. That's cool.
Is it best to work with an advisor that's fee-based or another way? Like what?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm biased on this because I'm fee-based only. I've worked both sides, right?
Okay. Have you?
Now,
what's the difference between both, and like what, like, help people understand, like,
because it's not very transparent. What you'll learn in the financial services business, nothing is very transparent.
Okay.
Typically, right? So you buy a life insurance policy, for example, because that's still in the financial services world. Well, how much did your agent get paid, and how did they get paid, and what's that look like? Well, you buy investments. Well, same thing. You don't really see anything happen normally. It's like, okay, well, great, but somebody's getting paid, right? You got to follow the money trail. So that's where I'm kind of nerdy, and I want to follow that trail. So there's the commission world, and then there's the fee-based world. Okay. And I started out in the commission world and did a little bit of hybrid of both, and then a couple of years ago went fully fee-based because I just like it being unbiased. But in the commission world, most of the time people are selling you this thing called an A-share investment, maybe a mutual fund or whatever.
Okay.
What happens is you make a deposit, and 5.5% or whatever of your money magically disappears. Okay. You don't know how, right? You get your statement and it looks like maybe the market's dropped 5%. But the truth is that went to pay your advisor, right?
Gotcha.
And there's an ongoing payout too, and you never see that. It just is mysterious. So that's your typical commission route. The conflict of interest is a commission paid person can only make money if they're moving you regularly, right? So you can never really be satisfied with what you're invested in, because if you can move them somewhere else, there's a temptation, right? Because you can earn more money.
Right. Gotcha.
It's kind of a disconnect there. Now, a fee-based advisor is different. With a fee-based, it is more transparent. So every month you'll see how much was charged to your account if they're doing your typical asset under management fee.
Gotcha.
Maybe it's 1% per year. It depends on probably how much you invest. But the idea is you set an amount, and that fee goes to your advisor and you see it. It is visible, and they can buy and sell things all day long. There's nothing, you're not getting charged for it. So it's a very different perspective. The big difference is a fee-based advisor has a much higher sense of responsibility to the client. So for example, if you're my client, a fee-based advisor, they have a fiduciary responsibility to you.
That was one of the questions, like what does it mean to be...
It's a big word, right?
Yeah, fiduciary.
Fiduciary means I legally have to put your interest ahead of my own.
Okay.
Right? Other arrangements like commission world, you really don't have that same responsibility. So legally, I have to put your interests ahead of my own. And then add one other layer of difference there. Typically, a fee-based advisor is also going to have a plan for you. Like, we're not just setting up an investment account. We're also going to help you project retirement, or what is it going to take to take care of your kids and all that. Where commission world is normally a one-off. You sell it, you move on, and you don't talk much afterwards.
Gotcha.
It's a different environment, but I can't say one is necessarily bad and one is good. I mean, you can tell by what I've shared what I like better.
Sure.
But it depends on the integrity of the person that you're working with, whether that plays out okay for you.
Just follow the money trail.
Always, yes.
Yep.
It's always about the money, or it involves the money somehow.
Yeah. What type of reporting or performance review should someone expect from an advisor to know whether their investments are working well?
Wow, these are big questions. So, it's kind of weird because in some segments of the investment world, like insurance companies, they have their own little products they saw there's a lot of money in investments, so they kind of created their products. Man, those things sometimes only give you a statement once a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? And they have stiff penalties if you leave them and stuff like that. So you better trust what you're getting into.
Yeah.
The fee-based world is, again, a little bit more strict. We have to at least provide quarterly performance reporting. So,
Gotcha.
Now typically most of our clients, every month they get a statement they can see. And then a lot of firms, like we do the same thing. We have this software set up where you can log into your accounts and you can see the performance reports anytime, how you're performing, how you're doing.
Gotcha.
The idea is you want transparency, but every firm's a little bit different in how they provide that.
Gotcha.
So, I can't say there's really a standard out there.
Right.
Hopefully, at the minimum, you get a statement every quarter.
Yeah.
Unless you're in the insurance world, and then who knows? All bets are off. They're really, talk about transparency. They're the worst as far as transparency.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Well, that was all the questions.
I just offended all the insurance agents out there. By the way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have a lot of them as our audience, actually. I'm just kidding.
We just dropped attendance. I am a licensed insurance person, by the way, just so you know. I'm not.
You're beating yourself up there.
Yeah, but a lot of those guys probably will agree that we wish it was a little more transparent.
Sure.
And so a good advisor or a good insurance person is going to tell you ahead of time. So, all right. Clear that air up.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Todd. It was fun. These are all great questions. And we'll probably have you on again, next year sometime. Get some more questions rolled out.
Good. I enjoy it. It's good stuff.
Cool. Thanks.